Hi, it's NuWave Primo Oven recipes, and today I'm going to be cooking up a pork shoulder butt, Boston butt, a pork shoulder roast, Boston butt, however you call it. But basically, I'm going to be cooking that up slow and low in the NuWave Primo Grill Oven. It's going to be grilling up indoors a whole pork butt for some pulled pork. And so don't have to go out to the outside grill, don't have to get hot and sweaty out there. Going to do it right indoors, slow and low, on the NuWave Primo, and we're going to get started with that cook right now. Alright, so here's my meat for this cook. It's a bone-in pork Boston butt, and it weighs almost 9 pounds, so pretty nice size one we got here. From this one I got from over at the Sam's Club. So what I'm going to do after I get it out of the pack here, I'm going to I'm going to use an injection, and I've got my injection needle here for injecting. I'll have a link in the video description for anybody who's interested in getting this on referral. And I'm going to inject it with a half a cup of apple juice and a half cup of apple cider vinegar. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to mix my apple cider vinegar into my apple juice there. So basically I have about 1 cup of mixture total. And after I get it all injected, I'm just going to, well actually in the process of getting it injected, I'm going to get it covered with some mustard as a binder. For you who have not used mustard as a binder or like your pork butt or your ribs, don't worry, the flavor of the mustard does not stay in. It helps keep the seasonings on, and for you who are not familiar, it's a pretty good technique to try. I'm going to use some Twisted Q Crooked Pig cane and maple seasoning to season the outside of the Boston butt. So basically going to get it unpacked. I'm going to turn it over to the fat cap side, and I'm going to go ahead and get it covered, and then going to basically get the other side covered, and then I'll just start injecting it all over to get it well injected and let it set for a while. As far as the NuWave Primo Grill Oven is concerned, as you can see, I've got one of the big roasting rings in here in the NuWave Primo, so I'm going to be kind of using the heat with the dome a little higher up to, not bring too much heat down on it from the top, although I will be using 50-50 on the heating elements. But we'll get more into the details of how it's cooked in a moment. For now, we have to finish preparing the meat. So I'm going to get it unpacked and going to start getting the rub and the injection taken care of. Alright, now I'm putting the mustard on, and you just want a light coat of mustard. You don't want a heavy coat of mustard. Just a light coat that'll help hold your seasonings in place is all that you need. Just a light coating, and it'll turn out just fine. I will say, as far as the seasoning is concerned, I go heavy with the seasoning. And as far as the seasoning type that you want to use for your pork shoulder, with pork you always want to use a seasoning that has a main ingredient of sugar, not salt. You want to use salt as your main ingredient when you're doing beef, but when you're doing like pork, you want to do something with a seasoning that has the main ingredient being sugar. Alright, so I'm just seasoning up the pork, and basically you want to make sure that you season all sides of your pork really well to, get a nice flavor all around, do all sides of it. Alright, so now it's time to start injecting this pork butt, and I wanted to mention I'm leaving the full fat cap on. If you choose, you can trim that down if you want to trim it down some. But the way I'm going to cook it, I expect to really render down that fat real good anyway, so I didn't do any trimming at all on this pork butt. And this is a bone-in pork butt, so there's a bone in there that will get out at the end. It's just one bone, real easy to remove once the cook is finished. But now I'm going to go ahead and get to injecting. And for anyone wondering, the reason why you inject, it just helps to infuse some flavor and juiciness into this meat. I mean, it's juicy already because pork butt is a fatty meat to begin with, but as you can see, as I squirt in, although some squirts back out, some of that fluid does stay in and is retained, and it just helps, give a real nice juicy flavor. The apple cider vinegar in there along with the apple juice just gives a real nice flavor. Really helps just break the meat down even a little bit more as it cooks. And so just finishing up the injection, you want to just, get that injection in there real good. All right, now that we have the pork shoulder all injected and it's all rubbed down and all that good stuff, we just let it set for about 30 minutes. So we're going to let it set for about 30. Then we're going to get the NuWave Primo Grill Oven warmed up to 245 degrees. I'll bring you back in a bit and we'll go through those steps. Alright, so I've got my pork shoulder butt that's been setting out about 30 minutes now. I've got my NuWave Primo. I've got it set up here so that I can, put things on with this, ring so that it can set up high. Basically, I'm going to just take the dome, I'm going to set it up here, set it up high. And I've got my probe. I'm not going to put it in my meat yet. I'm going to save that for later. But what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to, now that I've got it all set up, making sure that it's kind of stable, going to turn the NuWave Primo on, and I'm going to drop the temperature down to 245 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it's a 245, 50-50 heating elements. I am going to be most definitely using the probe to cook this. Sorry about that extra noise, but I'm going to be using the probe because I want to get this at certain temperatures when I do certain things. But ultimately, my final temperature with the meat probe is going to be 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Really want to get it really up to about 200, a little over 200. So we'll set it at 200 because we can only go in 5-degree increments on the temperature. So we're going to set it to 200, but basically I'm going to preheat now. I'm going to hit the preheat and going to hit start. And while things are preheating, I'm just going to tell you some of how this is going to be done. I'm going to, once it's preheated, try and carefully disassemble this thing, get my pork butt on fat side down. And once I get it on there fat side down, try and put the rings and all back in, have the meat probe in the meat, and going to let it cook till about 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And after it gets up to that point, I'll show you some more of the steps that I'll do after that when it gets to 165. But ultimately we'll be getting to 200 as our final cooking temperature. So just going to let this preheat continue. Alright, the preheat is complete. I'm going to get my lid over here. I'm going to turn my holder around. I'll set it over on this side here. Oops. I accidentally hit a button, but I didn't hit start. So, going to take this ring and just get it out of the way. Alright, now I'm going to take the pork shoulder and just make sure that I'm not dripping too much. Set it right there. And it just, barely fits in that ring. It's so big. I'm going to take the meat probe, stick it deep down into a big fatty part of the meat. I don't want to hit that bone. I've got the bone over here. I won't want to be in the bone. I want to be in a big piece of meat without being in the bone. So that feels good right there. Actually, the ring's not too hot to touch at this point, but I need to get the meat probe out and put the ring on before I get the meat probe in. So make sure that you put your extra ring on before you put that meat probe back in. Then get that meat probe down into a fatty piece of meat. It's going to stick it straight down in there into this meat. I think it's in good. Well, I'm going to get a better piece. There we go. I think I'm in good right there. Now I'm going to put the dome on with the power head. Now I've got 3 minutes left before the preheat would automatically stop and things would just, probably stop. But I'm going to hit start. And so we see our meat is at 55 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment. I'm going to let this cook continue, fat side down, 245 degrees Fahrenheit. Our current meat temperature, we can see 245 degrees Fahrenheit. And our probe is showing that our meat is up to 55 degrees at the moment. And just going to let this cook. It's going to take hours. It should take hours and hours to cook. So we'll just let this continue and we'll just see how long it takes. Alright, so just a little over 2.5 hours have passed and it just went up from 165 to 167. and I'm just cooking at 245 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's moving at a rapid pace as far as the temperature going up. Now that we're, at above 165, I'm going to get it wrapped up, and I've got a half a cup of apple juice that I'm going to pour over it after I wrap it in some butcher paper. I'm going to hit pause here, but I can't because this is a button that requires using my natural finger and not anything covered. So pause now, and now I'll get my gloves back on. Alright, so getting the lid off now, and gotta get the meat probe out of the way so that I can more easily maneuver things here. Alright, gonna get the ring out the way so I can easily get it moved onto my paper. I've got my paper in a pan here, so just going to keep it fat side down, moving it into the butcher paper here. Now that I've got it in my butcher paper in my pan, taking my half a cup of apple juice, just pouring it on over the top there. I'm going to basically try and wrap it around, fold things down under the pork butt, and wrap that paper up underneath so that the weight of the pork butt holds it in place. So I've got it into the meat. Now I've got things set up again. So I'm going to have to reset my settings, turn it back on, get it back down to 245 degrees. Since it's been, whoops, hold up, stop that. Turn it back on. Get down to 245 degrees again. And I've got my 50-50 again. Going to hit my probe again. Can get my temperature back up to 200 again. Since it's been rapidly rising in temperature, I'm going to keep it at 245. Going to hit start. I'm going to keep it at 245. If it were rising real slow, like if about 6 hours or so had passed already, I'd probably up the temperature to like 275. But since it's been rapidly rising, I'm going to keep it at 245. Let it continue to cook. Now it's up to like 161. So once it gets to 200, we'll be done. Alright, so 4 hours and 10 minutes exactly, and it reached 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And turn it off. And I want to show you something in here. I had to reposition that meat probe because right after I put it in, shortly after I wrapped it up and put the probe in after I wrapped it, it was going up real rapidly. I mean, it hit like, it was showing 200 like maybe 20 minutes after I wrapped it, so I knew I positioned the meat probe improperly. So I just repositioned it. I just stuck it right down deep into that meat, straight down, and it was reading fine, going up at what I would consider a more normal type of a pace, but still all the same. Finishing in just 4 hours, 10 minutes is a super speedy cook for a pork butt. I'm going to get my meat probe out of there now. I'm just going to see how, it doesn't seem hard putting the meat probe in and out. So I think that it's okay, that it's all good and done. I'm going to get this ring out the way. Now what we do with the 200 degree pork butt is we put it in a cooler, wrapped up still. So I'm putting it in my cooler and just close the cooler. We let it sit in that cooler for 1 hour. So basically it's going to sit in that cooler for an hour. I'll bring you back in 1 hour. Alright, so the pork shoulder butt has had an hour to hang out in the cooler, and that helps to tenderize the meat more. So now we're going to do an open, and I'm going to go ahead and get it out. I'm going to basically take the paper off in the cooler here, so I just take just the pork butt out of the cooler. Very hot, very hot. Alright. the way. Now we got a bone right here that we want to get out. So I'm just getting the bone off. And that bone comes right off pretty easily. Get it off of this there. Alright. Out came the bone. Now that the bone is out, we can take this pork and we can just chop it up. So I've got myself these bear claws here, and I'll put a link in the video description for them, but it makes it real easy to pull the pork. So just going to pull the pork here. So I'm just pulling the pork apart here, and this pork is pulling tougher than I would personally like, but this is because it cooked quicker than you would normally cook a pork butt. So this went kind of like, you know, faster than expected, and with something like a pork shoulder butt, it's basically going to be tougher to pull the quicker it cooks. It's not pulling super tough, but it is a tougher pull than if it would have cooked longer. And, you know, basically if it were taken at an even lower temperature, it probably would have, you know, cooked and come out a bit more tender than this pull that I'm doing here is going. Alright, I've got this pork broken up a bit. I'm going to just take a piece to perform a taste test on. So I'm just going to take this piece here and plate that. But when you do yours, I'm thinking, you know, maybe take it down to 220. Not even 225. Take it down to 220. And it'll take longer, but you'll have a more tender pull. But I guess if you want it hot and fast, NuWave Primo style, do 245. That's hot and fast in the Primo in just 4 hours. So I'm going to go ahead, get the camera moved around, and we'll do a taste test. Alright, so let's taste test this pulled pork. Alright, not too chewy. Not too chewy. So not as chewy as really a hot and fast from the grill. A little more tender than a hot and fast from the grill, but a little less tender than one that you would do in the Instant Pot or slower and lower. But very good all the same. I mean, you could give this to anyone and yourself, and it's good. The way it's turned out is good. You know, if the pork, the pulled pork was a little too tough, you can mix it with some barbecue sauce, maybe just simmer it, you know, in whatever oven you want to simmer it in for a little while with some barbecue sauce, and that would tenderize the meat more if it needed that. I don't feel it needs that really. It seems pretty fine. So it turned out alright, although it was a tougher pull than I wanted. All the same, it comes together good. The NuWave Primo can do a pork shoulder. Can cook a whole pork shoulder. You just got to take that temperature down real low. And you know, and I was using the extender to, you know, basically the roasting extender ring, the big ring, to take some of that heat off the top. So it was even less heat, and I still had it done in 4 hours at 245. So you definitely got to bring that temp down. Definitely bring it down to like 220 and try that maybe. See how that turns out, getting the temp up to 200 degrees. And you want to, you know, wrap it at about 165, put a little juice or something in there. But all the same, the NuWave Primo can get the job done. And it can get it done quick if you want it done quick. It can get it done slower if you want to take the temp down lower. So I am pleased with the capabilities of the NuWave Primo. It's just a matter of gauging where you're going to have that temp at to get it just right. So definitely looking forward to your comments. You can find this and other recipes in written form at superwaveovenrecipes.com. You can always come to this YouTube channel by just going to waveovenrecipes.com. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at waveovenrecipes, the podcast anchor.fm/waveovenrecipes. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Share the video with a friend. Subscribe to the channel. And good eating.